I recently read an account from someone who recalled almost in a boastful way about how a friend had come to him in distress with a problem, and instead of offering ideas that might have helped their friend, this person in distress, they restrained themselves in favor of merely listening. And he was encouraged in this approach by the belief that this is what a good Catholic should do, to restrain ourselves from sharing our thoughts or from speaking while someone else tells us about their problems. Instead, we need to be a listening people and a listening church. And this theme seems to be something of a slogan in the life of the church today. We're always hearing about the synodal way and about our commitment to listening, often at the expense of speaking. But in this account that I had been reading, what if the person who was in distress with this problem was looking for help or a solution to their problem? Yes, it's a fine thing to listen, but listening is a futile thing unless it is paired with understanding, and there's no good in understanding a problem unless it is motivated by the hope of seeking a solution to that problem. For example, what would you think of a medical doctor who every time someone came to them with a medical problem, they sat and they listened, but they didn't offer anything in reply? They just listened to you tell them their problems, and then they billed you and sent you on your way. What if they knew what the answer was? What if they knew what the prescription was, but instead of giving it to you, they were compelled by this same kind of sentiment that it is better to listen than it is to offer your own thoughts on a given problem? What people really need is to be heard. Well, I would think that such a doctor is showing contempt for their patients. To know how to help someone, to have a unique knowledge that allows you to help people with their problems, and then to refuse to help them cannot be the result of some sort of moral good. It would have to be the result of, at best, good intentions that are actually harmful, or at worst, a kind of contempt for those who you would allow to suffer unnecessarily. Now that's well and good when we're talking about practitioners of physical health, but what about practitioners of spiritual health care? Because if the church is anything, it has to be that, right? The church is a curator of a divine revelation that tells us who God is, who we are in relation to him, and the solution that God has offered to us in the midst of all of the fundamental afflictions that we suffer under and how we might be liberated from them. And the great news of Christianity is that God has revealed that exact thing to humanity and charged a group of people with ensuring that that very same message is disseminated and then preserved from distortion. But he also added a warning, which is that many people would hate the church for being this very same messenger. That is the mission of the church, to proclaim that message, to reveal it for the good of humanity, and to be unafraid of the consequences that might come from that. One thing Jesus did not say was, go out and listen to the perspectives of other peoples, other political parties, other cultures, other groups, and see what you can learn from them so that you can adapt this same message that I'm giving you so that it's less abrasive to them. No, he said, go and proclaim it as it is, this message which I have given to you, and be prepared for the animosity and the hostility of the world when you do so. In other words, he said, go and be disagreeable to the world in the name of truth and healing and good news and mercy for the world, with the understanding that the people of goodwill who will accept and benefit from this message, that it is worth doing that if it means upsetting and being hated by those people who won't accept the message. But today we find ourselves in a church with significant pockets that are persuaded by an opposing or opposite wisdom, one that says that we need to listen to others in order to be more agreeable to them, and we should refrain from speaking or proselytizing if it upsets them. I think it was Trent Horn who said or wrote something somewhere at some point, and if he didn't say this, then I apologize. I don't know, shout out to Trent Horn, you're doing awesome work, man. He said something like, how much would you have to hate other people to be in possession of knowledge that could lead to their eternal life and salvation and not share it with them? So what does it say about a church who has inherited the only real solution that matters, from which all other solutions come, and refused to share it with the world? I would call that a hateful church, one that must have that special kind of hatred that Trent Horn may or may not have written about. So why is this contemptuous belief gaining traction within the church, or has ever gained traction within the church? If I had to guess, I'd say it probably comes from the discipline of psychology, whose aim is to treat the afflictions of the mind, or if we're really being honest about this, the afflictions of the soul. But we are moral beings, and as moral beings, it is our moral condition that determines the degree with which we are afflicted by these things. But modern philosophy and the psychology that is derived from it, from thinkers like Nietzsche and Weber and Freud, have insisted that there is no true right and wrong that is external to us, only internal values that arise from within, and therefore morality can't be the source of these afflictions or the solution. So the best we can do is listen and provide tools and insights, maybe derived from science, I guess. Well, science doesn't tell us anything about how we ought to live. In other words, it doesn't tell us anything about what is right or wrong. David Hume, he's an Enlightenment philosopher who is often credited with contributions that many people consider to be synonymous with modern science itself, famously argued that you can't get an ought from an is, and science can only tell us what is, not what ought to be. But science, as a result of the work of people like David Hume, in the struggle for the hearts and minds of Western people and Western civilization, has largely displaced religion. And so it becomes our only recourse. We naively turn to science to tell us something that philosophers like David Hume have already conceded it can't tell us. And we end up with psychologists who refuse to tell us anything of an ethical nature, to give us ethical advice precisely at the moment where we need ethical advice. And this pattern of turning to science for all the solutions that we need seems to have found favor again within certain pockets of the church, even though it has no solutions to offer to the real problems that people are faced with, which are life and death problems, not just physical, but spiritual. Meanwhile, the church does have the solution. It's contained within this great intellectual tradition of faith and reason that the church has curated for thousands of years, and now for some hateful reason is refusing to share it with the world. And while the allure of the honor that comes with collaboration with the scientific world might explain some of what motivates this reluctance in the church today, I think it actually has a lot more to do with cowardice and fear of the response that Jesus specifically prepared us for and warned us about. All the worst evils of the world are rationalized as being necessary for some greater good, and cowardice for fear of animosity is one such evil. If we refuse to give people what they need to hear because of fear of hostility from those who refuse to hear it, the true victims are the people of goodwill who would have embraced this message if it had been given to them and they would have benefited from it, but instead are left confused and hurting. Jesus specifically gave this message of truth and his authority to speak it to the church. There are no good reasons to refuse to do so and to convince yourself that you're still a follower of Jesus. And as a departing remark, can I ask, how bad does the situation have to get before the church will be willing to transition away from this approach? And are we even willing to ask that question? Do we have a threshold that we've identified? How aggressive did the opponents of the church's message have to get before we realize that cordiality with them is unproductive at best and suicidal at worst? Because here's where my threshold, at the very least, is as a father of children. Because activists, that's not hyperbolic, actual activists are in our Catholic schools laying their ideology on the minds and the bodies of our own children, and we're still preoccupied by this sentiment and this sentimentalism about dialogue. At what point are we going to wake up and say that the time for friendliness needs to give way to an uncompromising intolerance of deception and evil? Because we need to draw that line somewhere. We need to realize that there are some people who are uncompromising themselves in their beliefs and in their hostility against the church. And we can't be afraid to oppose them, standing firm and preaching that truth of that message with the very same divine authority that Jesus gave to his holy apostolic church. Hey, thanks for watching. The reason I can continue making content like this is because of the generous support of my viewers. If you are able to support the work I'm doing, there are a couple of ways you can do that: by donating through my website or by joining my online community, The Reinforcements. Both can be done by visiting brianholdsworth.ca, the .ca because that's how we internet in Canada. Members will have the opportunity to personally interact with myself and other community members, and certain levels will receive a free gift basket from Glory and Shine, who is a family-owned Catholic bath and body products company whose beard balm I'm wearing right now. Members also get free access to Christ-Centered Capital, which offers ethical investing tips that are in accord with Catholic beliefs. Even if you aren't able to support my work, consider checking both of them out at gloryandshine.com and christcenteredcapital.com. And of course, don't forget to like and subscribe. And again, thanks for watching.